The parking lot was silent in the early morning. Dennis Hayes, exhausted from his overnight shift at the diner, didn't see the black Mercedes until his rusted pickup truck scraped against it, metal grinding against metal, a long, ugly scratch carved into the pristine paint. His heart stopped. No one was around. No cameras pointed this way. He could drive away, pretend it never happened. But then Charlie's face flashed in his mind, his 8-year-old son, who believed his father was a hero. Dennis fumbled for a pen with trembling hands. On a crumpled napkin from his pocket, he wrote the words that would unravel his life. "I'm so sorry for scratching your car. I will take full responsibility. Please call me." He left his phone number and placed the note under the windshield wiper. What Dennis didn't know was that the car belonged to Rachel Bennett, a CEO who had been searching for someone exactly like him. Someone honest enough to confess when no one was watching. This wasn't about a scratch. It was about something far bigger, and Dennis had just walked into a test that would change everything. Dennis drove home through streets still dark with pre-dawn silence. The apartment he shared with Charlie was on the 4th floor of a building with peeling paint and a broken elevator. Inside, Charlie slept, curled under a thin blanket that had belonged to his mother. Dennis stood in the doorway, watching his son breathe, the boy's face peaceful and innocent of their daily struggle. Years ago, Dennis had been a mechanical engineer at a respected firm. Then Lisa got sick. Cancer took her fast, leaving behind crushing medical debt and a young boy. Dennis sold everything and took the first jobs he could find. Warehouse work during the day, waiting tables at night, weekend deliveries. The apartment was small but clean. He couldn't give Charlie much, but he could give him dignity. On the kitchen counter sat bills stamped overdue, months behind on rent. One more month and they'd be on the street. Dennis made coffee and stared at his phone. The Mercedes owner would call, demanding payment. The scratch would cost $1,500, maybe more. He had $247 in his bank account, but he had done the right thing. When Charlie was old enough to understand, Dennis wanted his son to know his father had been a man of integrity, even when it cost everything. Charlie woke, climbing into Dennis's lap without a word. Dennis wrapped his arms around his son and breathed in the scent of cheap shampoo and childhood. "Morning, buddy," he whispered. These quiet morning embraces kept Dennis going. Dennis walked Charlie to the bus stop. Other kids wore name-brand sneakers and carried character lunchboxes. Charlie's shoes had holes covered with cardboard. His lunch was peanut butter sandwiches in a paper bag. When the bus pulled away, Charlie pressed his face to the window and waved. Dennis waved back, smiling until the bus disappeared. Then his smile fell away. The phone rang that afternoon, an unknown number. Dennis answered, his voice rough. "Hello." A woman's voice came through, smooth and professional. "Is this Dennis Hayes? I'm Rachel Bennett. You left a note on my car." Dennis's heart hammered. "Yes, ma'am. I'm so sorry. I take full responsibility." There was a pause. "Why didn't you just drive away? No one was watching." The question caught him off guard. "Because my son asks me every night if I did the right thing that day." I needed to say yes. When Rachel spoke again, her voice had softened. "The repair will cost $1,800. Dennis closed his eyes. 1,800 might as well have been 18,000. "I'll pay it. It might take time, but I promise I'll pay every cent." Rachel paused. "I'd like to discuss this in person. Can you meet at the downtown coffee shop on 5th Street? Dennis agreed because what choice did he have? After hanging up, he stared at his phone. Something about the conversation felt strange, but he pushed the thoughts away. He pulled extra shifts, loading boxes until his back screamed. Every tip went into an envelope hidden in his drawer. By the end of the week, he had scraped together another $160, still nowhere near enough, but it was something. Dennis put on his only dress shirt and stared at the mirror. He looked like what he was, a man barely holding on, but he straightened his shoulders. He would face this with dignity. The coffee shop was in a part of town Dennis rarely visited, glass towers and people in expensive suits. Inside, Rachel Bennett sat at a corner table. She was young, with sharp eyes that took in everything. She stood and shook his hand firmly. "Mr. Hayes, thank you for coming." She ordered them both coffee, then studied him with uncomfortable intensity. Tell me about yourself, Dennis. He shifted. There's not much to tell. I work 3 jobs. I have a son. I'm trying to do right by him. Rachel tilted her head. You used to be an engineer, excellent performance reviews at Morrison Industrial. Then you quit. Dennis felt his face flush. You investigated me. Rachel didn't apologize. Your wife died. You quit to care for her and your son. The medical bills bankrupted you. Since then, you've been working jobs you are overqualified for. Dennis's hands clenched. What's your point? Rachel leaned forward. Why haven't you gone back to engineering? The question stung. I've been out too long. Technology moves fast, and I work 16-hour days just to survive. Rachel nodded. What if I could offer you a way to pay off that scratch and change your situation? Dennis felt hope, then suspicion. I don't take charity. Rachel's eyes flashed. Good. I'm not offering any. I'm offering you a job. She slid a business card across the table. I own Bennett Technologies. We design logistics software. I need someone in warehouse operations who understands both manual labor and technical work. $60,000 a year to start, benefits included. Dennis stared at the card. It was more than he made from all 3 jobs combined. Too good to be true. Why me? Rachel sat back. Because you left that note. I've interviewed dozens of candidates. None had what I really needed. Integrity, someone who does the right thing when no one's watching. Dennis shook his head. You can't offer a job because of a note. Rachel smiled. It's my company, but there are conditions. 90 days probation. If you can't perform, you're out, and you'll still owe me for the car. Dennis felt the trap closing. If he failed, he'd be worse off. But if he didn't try, he'd always wonder. He thought of Charlie, the holes in his shoes, standing apart from other kids. What about the car? Rachel waved dismissively. Part of your probation. Make it through 90 days. We're even. If not, payment plan. Dennis picked up the card. When do I start? Rachel's smile widened. Soon. Don't be late. She stood to leave, then paused. Dennis, I'm not doing this out of pity. I believe you have value that's being wasted. Don't make me regret it. Dennis woke early, walked Charlie to Mrs. Patterson's, kneeling to tie his son's shoes. I got a new job, buddy. Dad will be home for dinner now. Real dinner. Charlie's eyes widened. Every night? Every night. The boy hugged him tight. That hug carried Dennis through the nervous drive to Bennett Technologies. The warehouse was huge, filled with equipment and supplies. Workers moved with practiced efficiency. Dennis reported to Troy, the warehouse supervisor, a thick-necked man who looked at him with suspicion. You're the new guy, Rachel's special project. The way he said it sounded like an insult. Dennis kept his face neutral. Just here to work. Troy grunted. We'll see how long that lasts. Rich ladies' charity cases don't usually make it past the first week. He handed Dennis a vest and clipboard. Inventory duty. Count everything in Section C. Should take you all day if you do it right. The work was tedious but familiar. Dennis counted boxes, checked serial numbers, entered data. Around him, workers whispered and shot curious glances. He ignored them and focused on the task. By shift's end, he had finished Section C and started Section D. Troy checked his work, clearly expecting mistakes. He found none. Dennis clocked out and drove home. Day 1 complete. Charlie was waiting, bouncing with excitement. Did you have a good day, Dad? Dennis scooped him up. A great day. We're ordering pizza tonight to celebrate. The first weeks passed in intense learning. Dennis absorbed everything, noticing inefficiencies in the warehouse layout and workflow bottlenecks. He kept observations to himself, not wanting to overstep. Troy gave him the worst assignments, heavy lifting, tedious data entry. Dennis accepted without complaint, arriving early and leaving late. Slowly, other workers began to soften. They saw he wasn't above any task, that he worked harder than most. One morning, Dennis noticed loose bolts in the industrial racking system. The weight distribution looked dangerous. He mentioned it to Troy, who dismissed him. Been like that for months. It's fine. Dennis couldn't let it go. He stayed late and wrote a detailed safety report with photos and recommendations, addressed it to Rachel's office, and dropped it in internal mail, not expecting a response. The next morning, Rachel showed up in the warehouse wearing a hard hat and safety vest. She walked directly to Dennis. "Show me," she said. Dennis walked her through his concerns about the racking system. Rachel listened intently, asking sharp technical questions. When he finished, she turned to Troy. "Why wasn't this addressed?" Troy stammered about maintenance lists. Rachel cut him off. "Get it fixed today. Shut down this section if you have to." She looked at Dennis. "Good catch. Come to my office during lunch. I want to discuss your other observations." She walked out, leaving Troy glaring at Dennis. Rachel's office was all windows and minimalist design. She gestured for Dennis to sit. "You've been here a short time. Troy says you're adequate, but I've been watching footage and reviewing your reports. You're exactly what I hoped you would be." Dennis shifted. "I'm just doing the job." Rachel smiled. "No, you're seeing problems and solving them without being asked. How are you adjusting otherwise?" Dennis chose honesty. "The work is fine, but some guys think I'm getting special treatment. Troy especially has been making things difficult." Rachel nodded. "Troy's competent but resistant to change. I'd like your input on restructuring warehouse operations when you're ready." She pulled out a folder. "Meanwhile, I'm enrolling you in our professional development program. 2 evenings a week, supply chain management, new software, optional for most, mandatory for you." Dennis's first instinct was panic. Less time with Charlie, but this was training that would make him more valuable. "I'll make it work." Rachel studied him. "How is Charlie doing?" The question surprised him. "He's good. Better now that I'm home for dinner." Rachel's expression softened. "I raised my daughter alone. She's in college now, but there were years when it was just us. It's the hardest thing you'll ever do." Dennis hadn't known. "It's worth it," he said simply. Rachel smiled. "Yes, it is." The training program was intense. Logistics, software, inventory optimization. Dennis studied after Charlie went to bed, taking notes, asking questions. He was the oldest person in the program and the only one from the warehouse floor. Some looked at him with curiosity, others with contempt. He didn't care. He was there to learn. Dennis had proven himself capable of strategic thinking. Rachel started calling him into logistics meetings, asking for his perspective. Troy's hostility crystallized into something colder. He assigned Dennis the most dangerous tasks, hoping for a mistake. Dennis recognized the game but refused to back down, completing every assignment flawlessly, documenting everything. The break came when a major shipment arrived wrong, thousands of dollars of equipment at the wrong location. Troy blamed Dennis, saying he had signed off on the delivery. Dennis pulled up electronic records showing he had been in training that evening, nowhere near the warehouse. The signature on the physical form was forged, badly. Rachel called a meeting with Troy, Dennis, and HR. Troy doubled down until Rachel played security footage showing him accepting the delivery. The room went silent. Rachel's voice was ice. "You're fired. Security will escort you out." After Troy left, Rachel turned to Dennis. "I'm making you interim warehouse supervisor, same job Troy had, with appropriate pay increase. If you perform well, it's yours permanently." Dennis felt the floor drop. "I've only been here a short time." Rachel met his eyes. "And you've shown more leadership and integrity than Troy did in years. Do you want the job or not?" Dennis thought of Charlie, of the stable future this could provide. "I want it," Rachel nodded. "Good. And Dennis, your probation is over. You've more than proven yourself. Welcome to Bennett Technologies." The promotion changed everything. Dennis's salary jumped to $75,000. He paid off back rent, bought Charlie new clothes and shoes, restocked the refrigerator. At work, Dennis implemented the changes he had been cataloging: reorganized layout, updated inventory system, new safety protocols. Not everyone liked the changes, but results were undeniable. Productivity increased, errors decreased. Rachel sent a short email. "Well done." Charlie blossomed with the stability. His grades improved. He made friends, talked more about school. The haunted look in his eyes began to fade. Dennis coached Charlie's weekend soccer team, something he never would have had time for before. Standing on the sidelines, watching his son run and laugh, Dennis felt emotion clog his throat. This was what he had been fighting for. Rachel came to one of the games, sitting in the bleachers with coffee, cheering when Charlie scored. Afterward, she shook Charlie's hand. "Your dad talks about you all the time. He's very proud." Charlie beamed. "He's the best dad ever." Bennett Technologies was finalizing a massive contract with a national retailer that would double the company's size. The client was coming for a site inspection to ensure Bennett could handle increased volume. Rachel put Dennis in charge of preparing the warehouse, both a vote of confidence and massive pressure. Dennis worked long weeks in the lead-up, checking every detail. His team rose to the challenge. The night before the inspection, Dennis barely slept. The client arrived, and Rachel led the tour with Dennis beside her, explaining operations. The warehouse gleamed, every process running smoothly. The client seemed impressed. Then disaster struck. A critical sorting machine began making a grinding noise. Dennis heard it immediately and felt his stomach drop. The machine was going to fail during the most important inspection of the year. He had seconds to decide: pretend not to notice and hope it held together, or shut it down, disrupting the demonstration. Dennis made the decision instantly. "Hold on," he said, walking to the control panel. He shut down the machine mid-cycle. The warehouse fell silent. Rachel looked alarmed. The client frowned. Dennis called his maintenance tech. "Open up the drive assembly now." The tech pulled off the housing. Inside, a bearing was shearing apart, metal shavings glittering. Another 10 minutes and it would have seized, potentially causing a fire. Dennis showed it to the client. "This bearing was scheduled for replacement soon. It went early. I won't risk safety or equipment for a good presentation." The silence stretched. Rachel stood very still, her face unreadable. The client studied the damaged bearing, then looked at Dennis. "How long to fix it?" Dennis consulted with his tech. "We have a spare, 30 minutes. The client nodded. "Do it. We'll wait." While the repair happened, the client talked with Rachel in low tones. Dennis prepared for the worst. He had just torpedoed the biggest deal in company history. When the machine was back online, Dennis ran a full diagnostic. Everything checked out. The tour continued. The client asked pointed questions. Dennis answered clearly and honestly. When it ended, the client shook Rachel's hand. "You've got something special here. That kind of integrity in operations is rare. We're signing the contract." After they left, Rachel found Dennis in his office. He stood, ready for whatever came. Rachel closed the door and leaned against it. "You just cost me years of my life." Dennis waited. Rachel started laughing, pure relief. "I thought you had lost your mind, but you made exactly the right call. That bearing would have failed during the first week of increased production. Can you imagine the lawsuit, the damage to our reputation? You saved this company." Dennis felt his knees go weak. "I just did what needed to be done." Rachel shook her head. "No, you did what Troy never would have done. You chose integrity over optics. That's why I hired you." The contract was signed. Bennett Technologies exploded in size. New equipment, new hires, new challenges. Dennis worked with Rachel directly, scaling the warehouse operations. She trusted his judgment completely. Their working relationship developed into mutual respect, then friendship. Rachel invited Dennis and Charlie to dinner, where they met her daughter Amber, home from college. The two families ate together, sharing stories and laughter. Watching his son be normal made Dennis realize how far they had come. Charlie's school had a father-son breakfast. Dennis attended without worrying about losing wages. They sat eating pancakes, Charlie chattering about a science project. Other fathers nodded to Dennis in greeting. Charlie showed his report card, straight A's. "I worked really hard," he said proudly. Dennis pulled him into a hug. "I'm so proud of you." The teacher called for attention. The kids had written essays about their fathers. When it was Charlie's turn, he stood nervously. "My dad is a hero," Charlie read, his voice growing stronger. "He works really hard so I can have a good life. He always does the right thing, even when it's hard. One time he made a mistake, and he fixed it by being honest. That's how he got his good job. My dad says, integrity means doing the right thing when nobody is watching. I want to be like my dad when I grow up." The room applauded, Dennis's vision blurred with tears. After breakfast, they walked to the car hand in hand. "Did you like my essay?" Charlie asked. Dennis nodded, not trusting his voice. Everything he had been through was worth it for this moment. At work, Dennis had become indispensable. Rachel promoted him to director of operations, overseeing all logistics. It was a title Dennis never imagined having, a salary that felt surreal. He moved out of the old apartment into a modest house with a yard, nothing fancy, but it was theirs. Charlie had his own room, decorated with posters of soccer players and planets. They got a train, a scruffy mutt from the shelter that Charlie named Buddy. On weekends, they played catch in the backyard and took Buddy to the park. It was a normal life, the kind Dennis had stopped believing was possible for them. And he still worked hard, still put in long hours, but it was different now. He was building something instead of just surviving. Rachel called Dennis into her office. She had something on her desk covered with a cloth. "I want to show you something," she said, pulling off the cloth. Underneath was a framed piece of paper, the original napkin note Dennis had left on her car, preserved behind glass. Beneath it, a small plaque read, "Honesty is the first chapter of wisdom." Dennis stared, memories flooding back. "I don't understand," Rachel smiled. "This note changed both our lives. I was about to give up on finding people with real integrity. Everyone I hired talked a good game but failed when tested. Then you left this, and I realized what I had been doing wrong. I was looking in the wrong places." She picked up the frame carefully. "I'm hanging this in the lobby. Every employee who comes through those doors needs to see it, needs to understand what this company values above everything else." Dennis felt emotion tighten his chest. "Rachel, I was just trying to do the right thing." She met his eyes. "Exactly, and that's what makes you extraordinary. Most people wouldn't have left the note. Most people would have driven away, but you didn't. You couldn't. And that choice echoed through everything that followed." Rachel paused. "I need to tell you something. That morning wasn't an accident. I mean, you really did scratch my car, but I had been watching you for weeks." Dennis frowned, confused. "Watching me?" Rachel nodded. "One of my warehouse supervisors mentioned a man who worked 3 jobs, never complained, always helped others, even though he barely had anything himself. I was curious. I investigated. I saw your background, your story. I wanted to meet you, but needed an authentic situation. So when you scratched my car, I saw an opportunity. I could have gotten it fixed immediately and never called, but I wanted to see what kind of man leaves a note when he could walk away. You passed the first test. Then I gave you harder ones. Troy was instructed to make things difficult. The broken machine during the inspection, I needed to know you would choose correctly when the stakes were highest." Dennis sat down, processing this. "You've been testing me this whole time." Rachel's expression was serious. "I've been giving you opportunities to prove what I suspected. That you're someone who can't be corrupted by convenience or fear. You've exceeded my expectations at every turn." Dennis didn't know whether to be angry or grateful. "Why tell me now?" Rachel set the frame down. "Because the tests are over. You've proven yourself beyond doubt. I want you to know that everything you've achieved, you earned. Not because of my pity, but because you're genuinely exceptional. The job is yours because you're the best person for it." The lobby installation happened soon after. The frame note was mounted prominently. Rachel held a small ceremony, gathering all employees. "This company was built on innovation and hard work," she said, "but those things mean nothing without integrity. Dennis Hayes represents what I want everyone here to aspire to. He made a choice when no one was watching. He chose honesty over convenience. And because of that choice, he changed his life and helped change this company." The employees applauded. The note became a symbol, part of Bennett Technologies' identity. New employees were told the story during orientation. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Charlie thrived. Dennis excelled, earning universal respect. Over lunch, Rachel and Dennis talked about the journey. "Do you ever regret it?" Rachel asked. "Leaving the note?" Dennis thought. "No. Even if things had turned out differently, I would have done it the same way. Because Charlie was watching. Maybe not that moment, but every moment. Kids learn from what we do, not what we say." Rachel raised her glass. "To choices that change everything." They clinked glasses. Years passed. Charlie grew taller, his voice deepening. He remained a good kid, serious about school and kind to others, talking about becoming an engineer like his dad used to be. Dennis helped with math and science, attended every school event. They visited Lisa's grave every year on her birthday. Dennis made sure Charlie knew how much Lisa had loved him, how proud she would be. Those conversations were hard, but necessary. Rachel promoted Dennis to vice president, then offered him the CEO position when she retired. He accepted, creating a scholarship fund for employees' children and implementing a second chance hiring program. The company thrived under his leadership. He led with empathy and integrity, never forgetting where he came from. Charlie graduated high school with straight A's, accepting a full scholarship to study engineering at State University. The day they moved Charlie into his dorm, Dennis felt pride and sadness. That evening, sitting outside the dorm, Charlie said quietly, "I'm proud of you, Dad, for everything, for never giving up on us." Dennis put his arm around him. "I'm proud of you, kid. Your mom would be too." Bennett Technologies held a celebration for its growth to 500 employees with offices in 4 states. Dennis stood before them all and told the story one more time. "I made a mistake. I could have run, but I had a son who believed I was a hero, and I couldn't let him down. So I left a note. That note changed my life in ways I never imagined. It taught me that integrity isn't just a word. It's a choice you make every day, especially when no one is watching." He pointed to the framed napkin. "That note represents a promise I made to myself and my son. The promise that I would always choose honesty over convenience, character over comfort. And I want every person here to understand. The most valuable thing you bring to work isn't your degree or experience, it's your integrity." The room erupted in applause. Dennis stepped down, feeling the weight of responsibility and the lightness of purpose. He had become the man he wanted to be, the father Charlie deserved. As the celebration continued, Dennis slipped away to his office. He stood at the window, looking out over the city lights. Somewhere out there, other people were struggling like he once had. He couldn't help them all, but he could help some. He could create opportunities, give second chances. That was his legacy, not the money or title, but the lives he touched, the chances he gave, the standard he set. Charlie called as Dennis was leaving. "Hey, Dad, just wanted to say I love you. I know today was a big deal." Dennis smiled. "I love you too, kid. None of this means anything without you." After hanging up, Dennis stopped at the framed note, reading the words he had scrawled years ago. Such simple words, such profound consequences. Rachel had been right to preserve it, to make it a symbol. It represented something true, that our character is defined not by our mistakes, but by how we respond to them. That honesty, even when it costs us, is never wasted. That integrity opens doors we can't even see. Dennis walked to his car, no longer the rusted pickup, but a reliable sedan that got him safely home. As he drove through quiet streets, Dennis thought about the path that had brought him here. The pain of losing Lisa, the shame of bankruptcy, the exhaustion of working 3 days, and then the choice. The simple, terrifying choice to be honest when dishonesty would have been easier. That choice had been a seed that grew into everything good in his life. Now, when he got home, Dennis sat on the back porch. The night was clear, stars visible despite city lights. He thought about Charlie in his dorm room, dreaming of his future. He thought about Rachel, content, knowing her company was in good hands. He thought about the 500 people who depended on Bennett Technologies. It was a good life, an earned life, built not on luck, but on the foundation of one honest choice made when no one was watching. That's what integrity meant, not grand gestures, but small decisions in private moments that defined who you were. Dennis raised his glass to the stars, to Lisa's memory, to the journey that had brought him home. "We made it," he whispered. "Against all odds, we made it." He felt a peace settle over him. He had done his best, raised a good son, built something meaningful, stayed true to the values that mattered most. In the end, that was enough, more than enough. It was everything. The story of Dennis Hayes and Rachel Bennett delivers a powerful lesson about the profound impact of integrity, even in life's darkest moments. Dennis, a struggling single father, leaves a note on a scratched Mercedes, unaware it belongs to Rachel, a CEO seeking someone with true honesty. His simple act of accountability, driven by his desire to be a hero for his son, Charlie, transforms their lives, leading to a job that lifts him from poverty to purpose. This narrative teaches us that integrity, choosing to do the right thing when no one is watching, is a currency more valuable than wealth or status. Dennis's journey, marked by loss, relentless work, and unwavering commitment to his son, shows that small, honest choices can open doors to second chances, even when the odds seem insurmountable. Rachel's trust in his character, forged through deliberate tests, reminds us that authenticity is rare and transformative. Charlie's pride in his father's heroism underscores the ripple effect of integrity, shaping not just our lives but those we love. This story stirs the heart, urging us to act with honor, to persevere through hardship, and to believe that our choices, no matter how small, can redefine our futures. It's a call to live with courage, to choose character over convenience, and to trust that integrity will always find its way. We'd love to hear from you. Has a moment of honesty ever changed your path or inspired someone you know? Share your story in the comments. We're moved by everyone. If this tale touched your soul, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to join our community of storytellers. Your support keeps these inspiring narratives alive. So let's champion integrity together. Subscribe now and be part of something meaningful.